Hi Arshiya ji, I see you. So I'm going to send you a request. Hi, good evening everyone. Good morning. Good afternoon. Hello.
I'm so happy. So is this okay now?
This is perfect.
Okay. Ooh.
Lovely.
Chalo.
Welcome Arshiya ji to Alap.
Thank you. Thank you.
Really so excited to have this conversation on a very, very important subject. So firstly, I want to thank you for, just bringing this initiative to our attention and for accepting our invitation to be here in conversation with me. Thank you so much for that.
Akhila, it's been a pleasure for me to be on this platform. You know, I've been trying to be associated with Alap for a while now. And I'm just so happy that this has worked out. And
Thank you
I'm
so
really
much.
happy, given my technology funk, that
This was
we
so
have connected
easy.
today.
Yeah.
Yes, now.
Lovely. Arshiya
You
ji,
have been
so
patient.
I just want to sort of introduce to people who have joined a little bit about, set the context for this conversation. So I just want to tell everybody
Sure.
that early this evening when Dr. Arshiya Sethi and I, we were doing a trial run, Arshiya ji said something that really sort of was, quite amazing. She said that there's a buzz inside me, and I'm quoting her, and she said, I'm actually tuned to matters of social justice. And I thought that that was such a beautiful expression of how Dr. Arshiya Sethi, activist and independent scholar, has lived her life writing and speaking on cultural issues internationally, on her research and administrative experiences with the arts. For those who don't know, she founded the Cree Foundation, which promotes artivism, arts and activism, braiding arts, activism, and knowledge creation, the three main verticals of activities that are undertaken by the Cree Foundation. She works with several international universities, think tanks, forums, and scholars to carry forward the discourse around the arts by being a strong, bold, brave, independent voice of artistic leadership. uh, Tonight, we are going to discuss with her her new initiative that she's co-founded with an organization called Arts Forward and the Shruti Performing Troupe. It's an initiative called Unmute. And all I know about it at this point, based on my own research, is that Unmute is a performer's guide to speaking up, which is laws, rights, resources, and has been created from the rights perspective, and it looks at rights and responsibilities of artists and arts leaders. So I'm going to, without much ado, sort of dive in and firstly ask Dr. Arshiya Sethi about activism in the arts, and why do you think, Arshiya ji, activism in the arts is crucial, especially in the times that we live in?
Well, thank you so much for that very interesting question and that generous introduction. Um, my first reaction to the question that you've asked about activism in the arts, I put a counter question. Isn't arts all about activism? Isn't it all about transformation? Isn't it all about showing a mirror to society? Isn't it all about changing and making the world more contemporary? About asking questions through a specialized language of performance or visual arts or whatever it is. I don't see a more powerful and more eloquent statement about questionings than art is capable of. No language, neither Gulzar Sahab's poetry, nor, anybody who has got a honey voice can match the brutal power of arts to be able to
Absolutely.
transform. And they say it begins by transforming you first. So you start questioning yourself,
Right.
what am I doing?
Right.
So I do believe that it's just that nobody drew this link and arts remained in a sort of a spiritual zone and artistic zone. And no one really looked at particularly the Indian arts quite the same way as transformative, powerful, questioning, and activism.
Right. It's almost like we're so afraid of that word, right? Activism. Somehow, the moment somebody calls themselves an activist, we're almost like, you know. I also read this beautiful quote today, Arshiya ji, which was really about, if you're neutral in situations of injustice, it means that you have taken the side of the oppressor. And so I want to, it's a really beautiful quote by Desmond Tutu. And, sometimes we choose not to engage with matters and issues that disturb us. Because we think that, okay, by virtue of being silent, we're not taking a stance, we're neutral. But I think that more and more now, actually, as I'm getting older, I think that is also a bit problematic, right? Just sort of not taking a stance, and by doing that, we're allowing that injustice to unfold. I want you to talk a little bit about how creativity itself needs courage, and how it is important to take a stance with the arts that you create.
So you're right that the word activism is always looked as negatively, particularly by those in the comfort zone. Right. I will not qualify that they are artists or anyone who is frightened of change, anyone who wants a status quo to continue, anyone who's comfortable and in the comfort zone will look upon people like me as problematic. And the thing is that when I tell you this, you're going to sort of probably laugh and say, I think my formative years as a young student were very important. And I studied in Delhi University, which has a tradition of questioning, but nothing compared to the time I spent in JNU. And there were 5 years I spent in JNU. 4 years, certainly 4 years plus. I did my master's in political science, and I did my MPhil in international relations. But I could have done it in anything. It was the ambience in JNU, the intellectual ambience of questioning, that became a part of our DNA, And while many people get disturbed by the JNU label, I think the JNU label really turned our heads in what I consider the right and definitely the social justice pathways, So although I stand apart from my other classmates in JNU because I'm the only one who really took to the arts and spent my entire life in the arts, but and many of my classmates set up NGOs, path-breaking work, girl, child, all that, native seeds, agriculture. They're friends of mine who are living with the most marginalized of Adivasi communities, hardly with any comforts that we live in, or even that you can see in this frame of mine, who lived a rough life, but they have not been with the arts alone. I'm the only one with the arts. And I'd like to believe that I honored the training that my teachers put into my mind, the critical analysis that they put into my mind, so that I was able to challenge even in an art scenario where there is a lot of belief, hierarchy, acceptance of your position. So the arts, I fear, reflect sometimes the worst in society, like the caste system, So there are some who are above questioning, some who are never to be believed. So that sort of a thing. But I had been a pretty much lonely voice. I won't say soul. There were many others, but not enough. I mean, we were drowned out for a long time. But today, with the rise of the next generation and a more equitable consciousness having set in everyone's mind, some of the practices that have been associated with the arts are actually being questioned. So today, I believe that the numbers are with me.
Absolutely.
In my point of view, kind of a thing, And there are more and more people who are questioning, what is this blind Guru Bhakti or blind devotion? Submission. That is probably a better word to use. The submission, unquestioning submission, where you are not seeing what is under the surface. So you will do all the pranams and the charan sparsh and pulling of the ears. I'm a Kathak dancer, so Kathak dancers do a lot of pulling of the ears and things like that. Okay, so after saying all this, I must tell you, I love the arts. I love the arts. I don't want to spend one day without them also.
Right, absolutely.
So
Right.
I have another area that you have been interested in the past, of my dance films
Right.
work.
Absolutely.
And I
Yeah.
wanted to tell you that that came into being because one time I was not well for a while, and I was unable to go and see performance every day. And so I started watching dance films, and that's how my interest came. I tell
Okay.
you the story, not to start off a parallel
No, no.
conversation on dance films,
But
but to tell you I am crazy about the arts. And that is why, because it means so much to me, that I think it's time we had some of the conversations that come under the rubric of unmute.
yeah.
And you know,
Yes, absolutely.
I'd like to talk a little bit about unmute, but
Yeah.
I'll leave your
Yeah.
questions to follow the order that you intended to.
Sure, sure. Actually, I wanted to, before, deep diving into unmute, I really wanted to ask you, Arshiya, a little bit about how has the pandemic been for you? And, what have been some of your key takeaways from it? And I'd like for you to speak both from the point of view of, you personally, but also a little bit as you've observed the space of
Yeah.
the arts unfold, right? It's taken on a completely new dimension. So I want you to sort of share some of your key observations.
First, I'll do the easy bit, which is personally. Okay. So in 2017, I went on my second Fulbright. This time it was an academic Fulbright,
Right,
and it was postdoc. It was a
right,
postdoc.
right.
For 13 months, I was in Minneapolis. Okay. You know,
Mighty cold.
Minneapolis can be
Yeah, I
freezing cold
know.
in winter.
That's right.
So when they told me it'll be cold, I said, how cold? And they said, very cold. But you see, very is a relative term. How cold? Oh God, it was freezing cold.
I can
Okay, I'd
imagine.
never seen anything like this. There came a point when I was walking outside and I couldn't breathe, you know. It was
Wow.
so cold. So I said, what is the temperature? And they said, -9. I said, bhai, this is it. This is when I go into the room and hibernate like a bear. I hibernated for 4 months because it was way too cold for me to deal with those 4 months. Okay. That taught me how to live in one room and be ultra productive. Because with
Wow.
no disturbance of having to go out or dress up or anything, there was no day, there was no night. I was just sleeping, eating, and writing. And I ended up being extremely productive. Probably never again in my life have I been so quantifiably productive. You can count the number of articles that came out and
I can imagine.
things like that.
Yeah.
So that prepared me in a way,
Oh,
not that we had an inkling that anything like this would happen.
sure.
So when it happened, the COVID pandemic, and it was lockdown, and then stay in, and all variants of that, and only the daring went out, and I
Correct.
don't think I was that daring when it came to the virus.
Absolutely.
So little things frighten me, but sometimes the big things don't frighten me.
Right.
So it was easy for me to stay inside. Again, a lot of productivity happened. I was able to write many of the things that were half written, ideas in my head. I was able to do that.
Right.
So personally, it was not a bad period.
Okay.
Also, I quite enjoyed doing something I had avoided for much of my life, which was learning how to cook a full meal. So given the pandemic, I too joined the YouTube gang that checked out on recipes and learned the names of masalas and things like that. So that was a different thing.
Mm-hmm.
But around me, I was seeing, because I'm part of many groups in the arts,
Right.
a terrible scenario happening. I saw shock. I saw unbelieving sort of, at what had happened, how overnight the world had changed.
Right.
The darings tried to create for themselves pathways on the internet, but it didn't come easy. It came with many problems. There's a digital divide. There is unequal digital capacity. There's unequal digital talent. And I count myself in the lower end of that. And somehow the pandemic has even brought me to this level that I can have this conversation with you. I was like, one business, babe, everything was live. We'd stand on stage, we'd do whatever we had to, sit on stage. But this, nothing had prepared us for. It came with many other things. It came with a crisis of sustainability.
Absolutely.
That was unbelievable because, you cannot say tomorrow to hunger.
Yeah.
It has to be addressed immediately. And regrettably, While in the first phase, there was still some enthusiasm, people had some savings, they were able to not only, sort of keep for themselves, but they were able to share. But by the second phase, there was a despondency. The economy was not doing well. There was no chance. It was a bleak future. And many people had eaten into their reserves and things. So the second wave, it was horrific with the oxygen and the deaths and all that. It was equally horrific with the, people just dropping out. There were attempts at suicides, artists, attempts. And I mean, we don't know how many may have succeeded, and we just don't know. There are no numbers that we can call upon. And I was a little surprised that contracts failed. And the biggest failure, and I'm sure I'm not going to be very popular for saying this, but please trust me, I'm too old now to be bothered about niceties only and things like that. But one of the biggest failures came from the government. The same government that calls upon the arts every time you want an identity marker, every time you want cultural diplomacy, every time you want showbiz and entertainment and the grand event and all that. So event bazi, you call upon the arts. But when the arts needed you, and there were many clarion calls that went out from people who mattered, from the people who had, the quieter voices also spoke up. Everybody was speaking up, but there was no response. It's not just that there was no response in giving in response to the crisis, as many international governments have done, but the government also held back on already committed grants. So whether it was a building grant or a production grant or the salary grant, it came up to a point and then nothing. Now, let me just give you an example of the production grant. The production grant follows a 75-25 principle, that you get 75 pele, 25. So on 75, everybody had made the work. They had spent 100%. And then even the 25 wasn't coming, So often it's 100 plus that you have spent. So it made me think of contracts and how seriously do we take them, and are we responsible for the fact that they are not working? I mean, how do you handle these sort of things? And that's how I moved towards arts and the law. Many people helped, instant rations, instant food and things like that. And the problem was, people would say, oh, there is a Gurdwara there, and why doesn't this artist or this group of artists? And do you know the kinds of artists? I mean, please don't assume that those we know are the only artists. There were Jagran artists, there were back dancers of, at events you have these group dancing, some pop singer and some dancer moving. There were no events, there was no anything happening. And for months and months and months, and how long can they sustain? There is not sufficient building of savings. There is no security system that the arts had, and nothing exposed this as much as this pandemic did. This for me was the saddest part. What gave me hope was that the artists stood with each other, and the artists stood with humanity. I say that there is no one who is as generous as an artist. With empty stomach, with no food on the table, they sang and danced and performed and read poetry, which was available on the internet. They shared ideas. Scholars gave their, new ideas in this very free and democratic medium without having any expectation. Can there be anyone more generous than that? They gave thousands of people hope and a reason to wake up the next day. Absolutely. And to look out for new work, to be ignited with hope as only arts can do, I mean, the songs that came, the dances, it didn't matter after a while that the dances were happening in restricted spaces, that it was happening between chairs and tables of your house and all that. I think it was a very dramatic moment where unusual spaces became performance spaces and got sanctified by the arts and things like that. So there was the good and there was the bad. It was the best of times. It was the worst of times, which, as you know, are the opening lines of A Tale of Two Cities.
Absolutely, absolutely. So beautifully said, Arshiya ji. I mean, you could have. I mean, seriously. I want to ask you now a little bit about unmute. And I just gave it a one-liner, but I want for you to just explain to us right now, like, what was the trigger for unmute? And of course, I have a question to ask you about the word itself, unmute, because it's such a beautiful and powerful title. But I want to ask you firstly about what triggered the idea of unmute itself.
So during the pandemic, okay, the first thing I need to tell you is unmute is about the rights and responsibilities of artists.
Okay.
This is the simplest way in which I can explain it.
Okay.
But it was born out of a thought that followed a spectrum called arts and the law.
Right.
Okay. So do we even understand at how many points arts intersect with the law? And when I say arts, I'm going to restrict myself to Indian arts, because I think that's what many of us are interested in here. And frankly, I don't know enough about the world scenario. So while I can give you examples of things that happened elsewhere in the world, let me, for this section, strictly restrict myself to the India thing. Sorry. During normal times, there is always just so much learning, exchanging, practicing, rehearsal, performance, and then the next day learning, exchanging, rehearsal, performances, and practices, that we are caught in this roller coaster ride of being in the arts ecosystem.
Right.
Okay. And there was no time to pause, to consider, to think, what is new? What else do we need to do? Kind of a thing.
Right.
So the silence from performance that was imposed by the pandemic brought forth some new issues, some very critical issues that just came forth. The net had linked us up so they could spread like wildfire. They could draw our attention to it. And some of these issues came to the forefront because of the nature of the medium that we were dealing with and both of us are involved with right now, which is the internet.
Right.
So, for instance, let me tell you that after the initial shock wore off and those who were ahead on the learning curve with digital lifestyles started putting performances and all, some became very brave and they said, okay, we will do a festival, online festival. And we all watched online festivals. And then suddenly in the middle of the festival, the screen would go flip and down. And no one understood. And you rang up, what happened? What happened? And at the other end would be the festival organizer, often an artist themselves. I mean, a dancer or a singer. I don't know would be the reply. Well, what had happened was that they had come into conflict with copyright travesties. That's how the thing became bad. Then sometimes the groups would get animated on, oh my God, this is my own work that is being presented as a lecture by somebody else. So that brought to the forefront plagiarism. Now, we in India think really nothing of taking without acknowledging, and some of the greatest names have done this.
Absolutely.
Okay, and we know it. Okay, and if you don't, please just look and you will understand.
Totally.
There've been people who've been whispering, "Dekho, mera work was बड़े उस आर्टिस्ट ने ले लिया या big scholar or big critic or something like that." And that's often what happens in a sort of hierarchies of power kind of a thing, that somebody just takes and assumes. And in fact, there is this entitlement sense that I'm doing it, no? So it's okay, So plagiarism issues started coming to the forefront. And one rather sad thing that really blew, in 2018, the southern part of India, in response to what is happening in the world from 2017 onwards, with respect to the Me Too movement, hashtag Me Too, the southern part of India had really taken up the issue, and they were the leaders. And I have a small column on Nartaki called Soch, in which I write on issues around the arts, normally dance, because that's the one my heart beats for, but it could be anything else.
Right.
So as I was writing on Me Too, my friends from southern India would write and say, "You write only about us. You don't write anything about things happening in the north." Okay, so it's very important that on this, somebody who has experienced it has to speak up. And once that person speaks up,
Then
and you do not hear it, or you stay silent, or you pretend to ignore it, then I'm afraid you are as much an enabler, as complicit as thing.
Correct.
And this sexual harassment is a subject that is experiential. Like, if I experience it and I say, you know, I've had this terrible experience and it's impacted me, or I'm disturbed or something like that. If you turn around and say, that's strange, it's never happened to me, where would you put this person?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is very important to understand. So now so while I had been hearing the buzz, and not today, but for a very long time, till somebody who had experienced it spoke up, I could not run with this cause in the northern part of India, you know. It's an allegation of the worst kind. I'd be in for perjury and defamation and things like that if I started on my own, you know, writing without having somebody who has spoken up.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, in the silence of the pandemic and the difficult times of the pandemic, 5th September, the northward journey broke out. It broke out with an incident that happened in Bhopal, which is in Madhya Pradesh, that is often described as Bharat Ka Dil kind of a thing. And I was shell-shocked that it had been happening for so long. And so, and many thoughts started coming into my head. What are we doing? What kind of governance? So my postdoctoral work was on governance. Okay, and everybody assumes that governance is only statist governance.
Right.
Governance is not statist governance. It's an organizational way of looking at things. And so you can have media governance on an art, or you can have financial governance like CSR governance. Right. That also comes into play. So big institutions determine which way the arts will move. By funding a particular type of artistry, they move it in that direction, you know. So governance is at many levels, and it's not just status. But the most obvious is status. And so I questioned myself. I said, a grant receiving organization which has enjoyed many benefits from the government cannot not follow the essential and mandatory compliances. So where was the IC in place? Why hadn't, for 2 years, the students of this institution had been speaking? Why hadn't they been heard? Why was the matter being brushed under the carpet? Who was silencing them? So there were a lot of questions that started coming to the mind. And personally, I was a little distressed. If I have a stronger word, I was that, okay? Because this is my favorite Gaiki, and I listen to it all the time. And these artists were amongst my favorite, and they used to come and stay in my house. You can't imagine how cheated I felt. Even as I speak to you right now, there is something happening in my stomach, you know, when I can't even keep revisiting it. And I loved and respected them so much, and what a fool I was, you know. Why didn't I? But I had not heard. Had I heard, maybe I would have thought differently. Maybe I would have closed access, or maybe not supported this scenario so much. Anyway, so this happened. So my mind started churning, and around that time I was in any case writing on something about arts and the law. And I was reading judgments that pertained to the arts that had happened, and they are fascinating. And really, I wish in art school we were to teach a little bit about law too, because it would be very interesting to see what has been the way judiciary has thought, what has been the legal mind, how does it apply itself to the arts, you know. If I asked an artist, I'm sure, do you know what evidence is? The answer that they will give will be completely different from the answer that a legal mind will give.
Absolutely.
For the legal mind, evidence is only that which is contained in under the Evidence Act.
Right.
Okay,
Right.
so many things that we assume, usne kaha, I heard so and so was present there. No, this is somebody's word against the other. You need to build proper evidence, in a scenario like this.
Right.
So what is evidence? What is the term that you are to use? We don't know as artists, and I think it's very important that we should know as artists. So with this first incident, barely had I begun to absorb it and sort out my mind that a second incident happened. This time it happened at a government institution. So my question was now amplified. Not only are you giving grants to institutions that may not be government institutions, but when you give a grant, all that you seek is a utilization certificate and the statement from the CA that the money was well used.
Yeah.
What about the fact that other compliances, are they in place?
Are they?
Let me tell you, are you using a building that's safe? Is this a building that has got a completion certificate? If you have a lift in the building, has the lift got its certification? These are all matters of the law in a way,
Yeah, absolutely.
But we don't have a compliance. I'm not saying go hounding people and things like that. I'm saying just as we accept UC, we must insist on what should I say, self-declaration affidavit.
Right. Okay.
So that we know that these things are in place, because in both institutions where recent incidents happened, there was no POSH compliance, and it's mandatory. POSH is the Prevention of Sexual Harassment Act, and ICs are to be in place. Trainings are supposed to happen, special training for the IC, that's the Internal Complaints Committee, special trainings for all the people present there. A pathway has to be openly and publicly displayed that should you feel uncomfortable because of any incident that may be of sexual coloration, please call up so and so, the head of the IC and things like that. So when you have that kind of awareness levels, people hesitate to to be deviant.
Right.
So if I want to give you so and if you have the buzz, if people are discussing things, I think there is no explanation why institutions which are meant to be rational and rule bound and rule formed and rule led tend to just let go this. Then I ask a very pointed question: is it because you think that women are unequal participants or members of the ecosphere that you can get away with it? So itna कहने के बाद, I also want to say that, the POSH Act only says women. But in the arts, we have so much gender fluidity. It doesn't even say those who identify as women. So we need to keep talking and keep raising the issue and raising the bar. And that is our only chance of creating ethical spaces that are truly nurturing for the arts. Otherwise, they will always be underpinnings of toxicity in artistic spaces, which will always be covered by some patina of spirituality and all that. And frankly, the problem is that the arts too long have sort of projected themselves as otherworldly, of a higher realm, whereas law is about this worldly and the here and the now.
It's a bit
earthly, So once you can start seeing things in this critically, in this sort of format, in this paradigm, then questioning follows, and all of us have voices. Now your question, the second part of the question was about unmute. I'd like to acknowledge here that this word was given to us by one of our partners, Sanjukta Wagh, who actually it was the Beach Collective, Mumbai based, but the artists are very young, very enterprising, and it was a total pleasure for me to work with them. I have always enjoyed working with younger people. In fact, some 20 or plus years ago, I set up an organization called the YP Foundation, which is the Young People's Foundation, because I wanted safe spaces where young people could speak frankly and freely, because I was watching the rapid change, the generational change, So from the grandmother to the daughter to the granddaughter, ideas were changing very rapidly,
Yeah.
and there was a possibility of conflict. And I had seen way too many happen, even from amongst my friends who were unhappy with some of the choices that children were making. And what was it that made them unhappy? Instead of going in for Carnatic music or Hindustani music, they wanted to go in for pop music. That in itself became, I'm saying, you're so lucky. Your children want to be with the arts. There are enough who have abandon the arts and things like that.
Yeah.
So, but this really became a thing, and I hate to tell you this, but a very good musician actually lost her daughter, who committed suicide. And that I have never forgotten. And I remember so clearly. I got the news, I got up and I said, no more time to waste. No other child will be lost because of this conflict. So the YP really became a big thing, and I learned a lot, including language. And to date, people quarter of my age or half my age are always rapping me on my knuckles saying, wrong, politically incorrect word to use, So they trained me. I don't know why you're asking me, you should be asking all of them. They're my gurus in turn.
Absolutely.
So they brought me abreast with it. So young people, I have found, have risen really fast, and I'm very hopeful about them. They are looking at the world in a little more egalitarian manner, a little more inclusive manner. They are questioning, and they are the digital generation. So they are like, ever in contact.
Yeah.
I don't think they sleep, because I see posts coming in the middle of the night. So you can ask me, what am I doing in the middle of the night? Yeah, I also don't sleep sometimes. It makes, as I'm aging, I still feel very young because of them and, whatever they have taught me. So unmute was a word that they gave to me, and we flew with it. It was the term we used, or the title we used, for all the trainings we did under a larger vision that we had of arts and the law. So in response to these two crises that we had, as well as the copyright, plagiarism, contracts issues, it suddenly struck me that, they all fall under the banner of arts and the law, and maybe we need to understand more. So I began with a 5-part series, Arts and the Law, in English. I had only one partner at that time. 13th, which was the India Habitat Center's Visual Arts Gallery, Dr. Alka Pandey just picked the idea up and said, when we were under normal times, Habitat was always a progressive artistic space. Now, even if we are not in normal times, and we will still continue to be progressive ideation space. So they helped me with the Zoom and all that, because I was technologically really backward. Okay, so they helped me, and 13th October we ran with the first one, which was on sexual harassment. And you are not going to believe that the session finished, I think, at 7:30, and by 7:35 I was not alone. I already had been pinged so many times by people who were saying, we're with you. I think you're having very important conversations. Trainers of sexual harassment. In fact, one of my longest running partner in this is a really well-known person who till then had not trained with the performing arts, but had trained with film arts. She has been a ethical systems creator and diversity trainer, organizational behavior, where you change the way an organization looks at things and all that. So she sat with us, and all the young people, all the younger dancers, those who gave the name Unmute or came together under the banner of the Unmute, we went with trainings. The very first training, however, was not a public training. It was just 40 gurus. I call them GASH, Gurus Against Sexual Harassment. Okay? And we never recorded it, because I thought, my God, just let me get them on board before anything else. So initially there was not much traction. Okay, not too many people came on. Till the end, I must tell you that only one male guru joined us, and others were only female gurus. So I would throw my head back and laugh and say, only two type of people are going to join right now. Those who are like diehard fans of mine or friends of mine who will say, oh God, if Arshiya's doing it, chalo, let's join. There must be some merit to it and all. And there'll be those who will be like, yeah, gung-ho, I'm progressive, I must join, and things like that. But one step at a time is how change happens very often. So that was the first one. From it came a training we did for over 100 artists that was initiated by Bij Mumbai, then came Kolkata, and then became specific organizations who asked us to train because they had been shocked by the fact that their systems had been inadequate and things like this had happened within their portals and all that.
Yes.
So interestingly, one of these asked me to train in Bengali, and I said, no, much as I love Bengali food, I don't speak Bengali, you know. So you have to put up with whatever I can train with. So they said, okay, do it in Hindi. But I heard you want it in Bengali. So I had been, one of the people who had pinged me was a dancer who was Bengali speaking and a lawyer.
Oh.
Okay. So this person, Somabha Bandopadhyay is her name. She was the representative of Shruti Performing Troupe. I must tell you the Shruti Performing Troupe was set up by my Hamumra, Shruti Bandopadhyay.
Right.
When I say Hamumra, she's younger, but
Yeah.
Hamumra is that little band. Okay.
Yeah.
And Shruti's daughter is Somabha, and she's a lawyer. And
Right.
so I used her because she had been very enthusiastic and supported me in the English things to do the legal part of the training in Bengali. I said,
Right.
I don't care if they understand the issues, but they must understand the law, because the law, not knowing the law is, and there is a fancy Latin maxim for this in law, but not knowing the law is no excuse. Okay. So I said, whatever happens, let's use this opportunity to get the law thing. So as she did the training and as I did the training, I realized that the chat moved in a very organic manner for me, slowly, steadily. But in her case, when she got on and spoke Bengali, the chat would go crazy, you know. So I was listening and I'm saying, okay, so they don't know much by way of law, but they want to hear it in Bengali. And I took an instant decision. I don't speak Bengali. And other than Ami Tumar Ko Bhalobhashi, you know that that's a big joke. And everybody learns it. I don't know Bengali. So, but within a week, we had an enormous spectrum of public interactions. We called it Kala Ebam Ain, which is the Bengali version of arts and the law. We had a difference. Instead of using practicing lawyers, which we had used in the English version, because of Somabha, who is a doctoral scholar at NUJS, we used a lot of professors from across the law colleges of India and legal departments of India, with the Vice Chancellor of NUJS being the first person to speak on the panel. Okay, everybody was shocked. The professors, that means academia, was engaged with this effort, and they were surprised at this uniqueness and specificity of situations of the arts. So there was a desire to learn from academia. There was a need to tell from the artists. There were those who were allies, journalists, amplifiers, organizers. Look at this. You came up, you said, we'll do this session. Anita Ratnam immediately said on Nartaki, open a column, Arshiya, just start. So every month now, about 500, 700 words on one issue. So it's not going to be so complicated. Now, when we started, we really weren't very sure where we were going, the Bangla thing. And I have to tell you something else that is unique about the Bangla initiative. And that was that we were 3 organizations that got together. Shruti Performing Troupe, I've already told you, my own Cree Foundation, and the Dynamic Arts Forward, which is based in Kolkata and Bangalore, headed by Paramita Saha, who had helped us put together the Calcutta version of our training in the first place. So we, long distance, different generations, 3 completely different generations. I think the many years that separate me from Paramita are about the same as the years that separate Paramita from Somabha. So 3 generations, each bringing different skills and working unquestioning. If it's something to do with technology, I don't even offer a peep or cheap or whatever it is, because they know so much more. If it is law, final point, and okay, Somabha, tell me, is this word correct or not correct? So we go by her because I don't know enough, and neither does Paramita. When it comes to knowing how to use social media, reach out to people, Paramita. So I urge everybody, this is too large an issue for you to take it on yourself. However well-meaning you are, you will end up becoming like that. Who was that guy? you know, Sancho Panza ka jo bhi. You know which one?
No, but I think
Don Quixote and
Don
Sancho
Quixote.
Panza.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'll
The
be
one,
sort of
yeah.
fighting. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's too big. So tie up, get together. Those of you who are on the same side of the believing divide, those who believe in the issue and those who don't,
Right.
please stand together and work together. It always works well. So about halfway through this arts and the law, we had planned originally only 90 minutes for it, and the very second session went into 2 hours. One session went into 3 hours.
Wow.
Because and people were sticking on till the end. So it was so evident that this was an idea whose time has come. People are curious, they want to know, and how to make it easy. You know, try reading a legal tome. It can drive you insane. I have a son and a daughter-in-law who are lawyers. At one level, I feel that this is my little kiss to them, you know, that because of you, I have got interested in the law. No. But when they send me a legal document because I've asked for it, I need many days to get through that legal document. So Mama helped us make law made easy, you know. So just in 10 points, she would explain something, or more complex things would get 20 points. But so we decided then that there is a need to have a resource center, which is bridging the arts world with the legal provisions, which are protectional in nature. So an artist not knowing his or her rights is not a very good idea. But how difficult is it to get through legal terms? So we'll put your rights and responsibilities in a simple manner so that you can read it and know as you gain in legal awareness. And this term really came to us when the law university was talking to us. They said, you know, you're doing our work, you're doing legal awareness. I said, really? That's damn good. Yes, we are doing legal awareness with the artists. You know, whatever you want to run with. As long as it's bridging these two worlds, let's work together. So by about the fourth session, we began discussions amongst us. There is a need for the resource center, so let's create it. So I was always saying there is a life after this. Beyond, what are we going to do in the life after this? So then started coming specific ideas, one of which was this website called unmute.help. Okay. Now, we keep saying unmute, they say pyar se, but the website is unmute.help. Okay. It is not arts and the law. The entire rainbow was arts and the law. Got it. Unmute were our training sessions, but the website which serves to be your resource of legal relevance is called unmute.help. Right. It is a performer's guide to speaking up, hence unmute. But speaking up cannot be blah, 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 blah. You have to speak concretely to understand. So we give you the background material in that. But unmute.help is much more than just a resource center. It is primarily a resource center. And it's not only about sexual harassment. It looks at the entire width of activities that would come under the rubric of arts and the law. So we have copyright, a section on copyright, on plagiarism, on rights of all artists, and rights of specialized communities. So LGBTQIA, artists living with disability, artists living with trauma, you know, what is their rights? And I'm afraid the picture is not very rosy, but at least we now know that it's not rosy. We are all talking. It also has a section that I call the calendar. Right. So this morning I did a session with the National University of Juridical Sciences as part of their Center for Media Law. But the Center for Media Law of the NUJS was largely about big media, Netflix, OTT, yay, wo kind of thing. What about our version of media? After all, our arts is also a communication media, you know. Absolutely. So this was almost an eye-opener. But you know what? We are very lucky. To date, in a class of 100, you will find about 10% who have had some equation with the arts as part of their growing up, even if it was hobby class or a little more serious. So it isn't that we are starting from scratch, but it is very important for us to sensitize the legal profession also about our words. As I was trying to tell them, I said, you know, if you ask an artist to describe what they felt, the chances are a poet will do it sher shairi, the singer will sing some bande, dancer will do some little number, abhinay number, and you will be wondering, what is it? Because you're so used to words and cut and dry and black and white. So please, let's not lose it as let's hear each other's specialized languages.
Right.
Bilinguality happens when you have to put the two languages together. They will find
common,
points of joining, and the next time it will not be from 0.0, but they'll start from at least 0.5. There will be enough. That is how Dubhashis. In the olden times, they were in courts that had connections with you. Had the bilingual people or trilingual people who played a very important role in the scribal politics of the state.
Right.
So right now it is very important for us to get the two languages together, because I gave you the example of the Evidence Act. Usne kaha, maine suna, he was present, she was not there, and all that. That's not evidence. You need evidence. And sometimes we don't realize how important something is. Like if you have messages that are suggestive of sexual nature or degrading the modesty of a woman, that is evidence. Don't in your anger delete it. Keep that. It's very important evidence, you know. So just awareness of simple things, 10 tips to remember about, stuff like that. So you find much of all this on the website. You find a training calendar on the website, and the training could be like this morning's work with the NUJS, or today's session with you, or some subsequent session with a group of dancers or theater people, you know, who work on the ground. And we are very interested in creating trainers. So training the trainer for us is a very good model. So if you work, say, with communities in forest areas or Adivasi areas and all that, we are particularly keen on training. Now you may turn around and say, oh, maybe they don't need you. But you know what? Wherever they interact, the skewed power relations
is going to
puts them at risk. And this point was highlighted by a very well-known domain expert in crafts, Nandita Pal Chaudhary. And she says, you know, when cultural property is owned by a community, with whom resides the copyright? You know, you have geographical indicators, you have hallmarks and things like that. You have people, see the gharanas of Kathak, for instance, is actually a geographical indicator. Banaras Gharana, Jaipur Gharana, Lucknow Gharana, these are geographical indicators. So when you give and take, can you say that this is ours or not? Or today there is a lot of problem happening with certain gurus suddenly turning around and saying, well, you may have learned from us, but now you cannot perform this.
I think you know, right?
Yes. What happens there? And I remember asking this question, when does the right of the guru end? So right now it's all so fluid. We've never thought about these boundary questions. And remember, not just in this subject, but anywhere where there is a boundary, where margins exist, there you have the most interesting questions being raised, or most vulnerable scenarios existing. Whether it is when the river meets the land on that riverbank or the floodplain of the river, you know, hundreds of birds are making their nests and things like that. You can't trample on it with a heavy foot. So same way, where communities are coming together, groups are coming together, it becomes a very thing. And power is a very strong determinant of who will win.
Absolutely.
And it should not be like this. And you should know that you have
speak of boundaries, but I also want to talk to you a little bit about, like, you know, in the context of the classical arts, for example, boundaries also don't really exist, right? Nobody takes the concept of boundaries very seriously either, because there is a certain sort of just the nature of the arts itself is it's sort of unorganized, right? So there is like so how do boundaries come into play in this context?
So, it's very firm boundaries is not an Indian concept. The Indian
Yeah,
mind doesn't work with
work
firm
like that.
boundaries at all.
Yeah,
So, it is the firm boundaries is actually a colonial concept. And that is why when the British come to India, they look at the diversity and they are like flummoxed to be able to make, and they are big, what should I say, governance people. They
right,
want order and things like that,
right,
So censuses started, and people of India, caste census, community census, the various censuses started as everything was being boxed into
right,
each other.
right,
Everything was being boxed. Boxes create separations. They don't create margins. Margins still allow porosity. You think the river doesn't leave its water on the land, or the land doesn't go into the river? So they find their balance. But if you create an artificial barrier, then the human being intervenes and
yeah,
often makes mistakes. So you talk about classical dances. I say the classical dance is a construct of very, very creative imagination, but it is not organic. It is a construct. I shall become very unpopular, very, very unpopular like this. Ask me some innocent questions so that
you know, Arshiya ji,
I win back.
I definitely want to ask you this question. You know, we spoke about it in the evening. You know, you mentioned about this buzz and being tuned, right? Being just being on guard, right? In some sense, and sometimes I think I just want to ask you. And you also use this word churning, and I think these and questioning. So I think these are all really crucial words in the context of arts activism, right? Questioning mind,
Yeah.
constantly being tuned to what's happening, to recognizing those signs, like to being able to read between the lines, to understand that this is not okay, something's not okay. I just want to ask you a little bit about, this, the importance of this, to be an activist. And Swarna Malya is also here. So just the importance of being an activist, like this whole idea of churning, the need for anger, the need to, could you just talk to us a little bit about that?
Yes, many people say I'm short-tempered and and an angry woman, angry old woman now. Oh God, I'm wrong on every front. I'm not the angry young man, I'm an angry old woman. But it's so wonderful Swarna Malya is here, because I'm actually walking in the footsteps that she has already shown. I'm not the first. Please, I'm not. I just put together unmute. That, if you want, is my one little achievement. And that too, I never did it alone. I would never have been able to do it alone. Paramita and Somabha have burnt the midnight oil. And I am really telling you, this is not like a nice phrase. This is real. They have worked so
I
hard
can
on it.
imagine. Yeah.
Thing. Swarna Malya put the first thoughts, the first articulation, which needed real bravery, comes from people like her, from people like Shubha. TM Krishna raises the issue, and suddenly these big names are raising the issue. So I really think I have sort of taken the benefit in Unmute, and the fact that Unmute is getting popular and Unmute has so much young people support and things like that comes because they churned the ocean. I'm just gathering the cream, Mute head on the head is just gathering the cream. And so there is no way that we can proceed further without carrying everybody with us. And so I want to thank you once again. And this is not the end of the end will be determined by you, but for giving us this chance to meet with so many people. I am expecting my phone to be carrying many pings, by the end of it. Okay, here's what I can do for you. Here's what I can help you. And let me be a little shameless, okay? I'm not promoting this. I'm telling you what I need. I need the list of counselors who can deal with the trauma survivors, originally trauma survivors, recent trauma survivors because they have gone through a bad experience, maybe sexual harassment, maybe something. I need legal experts who will be able to calmly explain what is the main problem, what is the argument you have to take. It should not depend on, somebody writing in and me running around and asking my legal friends, what's the answer? What's the answer? No, 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 no. We should have on unmute.help a group of people who are offering their help for limited times. We would like lawyers who would come forth anywhere in India and say, we are willing to give pro bono help, and we would of course need, who is it that everybody needs? Funders. Funders to help us expand and amplify this, and mercifully the digital media doesn't have many demands. It works by its own momentum, kind of a thing. But we still need all these people. We need translators. Somebody. So the website presently has English and Bangla. We are adding Hindi to it. But I would love to have Kannad or Malayalam or whatever it is. So if you can help us translate the already existing material, because here's what I'm saying: somebody who's very disturbed with an urgent clash of arts and the law is not going to be trying to read a language they're not familiar in and trying to find the solutions in a language they're not familiar in. So if we can supply it to them in the language that they need, if you can just translate this for us, that is good enough. There are hundreds of roles that we need people for, and I'm appealing through your channel.
No, absolutely. And it's also like, finally, it's the spirit of the collective, right? I mean, yeah.
So now this is very important also. Unmute is the commons. Unmute.help is a fine example of the commons, because it belongs to everybody. Admittedly, for 2 years, we have bought the domain and Cree Foundation paid for it. But endless hours were spent by Paramita, and endless hours have been spent by Somabha, and endless hours have been spent by their teams and other members, the person who created the website and all that. So while we may have done our bit, but this belongs to everybody. It's not us. There will be no stopping and all that. There is a segment in it which also has what we call the forum. Begin the discourse. Like, start, raise your question. And there has been some question that has already been raised. Join your voice to it or raise another question. The other thing that you need to know about unmute.help is we have a segment in it which is anonymous. Okay. The three of us will know, but should there be a big crisis and you do not know where to go or how to handle it, please don't deal with the trauma, the uncertainties on your own. We are there, and there are other people connected to us. So we will keep you anonymous. We may get you replies to the questions you have asked us. Even right now, I have had this happen. There have been a set of questions that have come to me, and I'm quietly working with lawyers. What is the best answer? What is the thing? And if a lawyer has already worked on a powerful person's sexual harassment case, that means so much thinking has already happened. What are we dealing with? And we are dealing with, say, a Guru Shishya scenario of, say, sexual harassment. Then there's a power dynamics. But this lawyer has worked in a power differential scenario in another context. So the arguments can be converted. Even as I say this, I must tell you that gurus are maligned. They are not the only people who are perpetrators because of the unorganized ways of the art, because there are no definitive pathways, whimsical methods come to play. So, you sometimes have to please the guru, sometimes you have to please the bureaucrat, sometimes you have to please the sabha people or the organizers, sometimes you have to please the critic, sometimes you just have to please even the stringer who is only going to take a picture, but big picture, and put you up, and suddenly you will stand apart. So this need for me and myself, that I must rise, I must achieve, puts the entire ecosystem sometimes at risk. So work ethically, that's the only thing I can turn around and say. Inclusively, rise together. I mean, if you think of the other, you all will rise together. The rise is inevitable.
No, absolutely.
You will be the ones calling the shots, and perpetrators and enablers and complicit people will be getting into a shrinking population if we raise our voice together.
No, absolutely. Arshiya, I was just wondering that it would be lovely for our lab to play host and organize a closed group, session with dancers where we could further, if you could, maybe anchor a session. I think that would be really interesting, on arts and the law.
That would be excellent.
Yeah.
And I would be very happy to do it. We will put together a really good team so that we have legal experts also.
Yeah,
maybe I call Asia Sherwani, who has been with me. Hers was the first phone call that reached me seconds after we closed our first program, and she's just stood with us. She's taught us, because we didn't know the language. We didn't know the language of reporting. We do not know the language of sexual harassment at all. We didn't understand what IC was. I have no idea what people are thinking an IC is. So to be on the same page, to make, if we are looking only at sexual harassment, I mean, that in itself is a series of trainings.
Yeah.
Then when you come to other issues like plagiarism or copyright or the rights and responsibilities of arts leaders, which also include gurus. So if you have built up a practice on public money, can you afford to put your own copyright on it? Does that work not belong to the nation then? These are just questions I'm asking. I have not found my own answers completely, but at least asking the right question is the first step.
Right.
Finding the answer is a process.
Absolutely.
And it may keep changing over time.
Right. Arshiya, I also remember reading about mental health as one of the important, areas of focus. I just wanted to just touch upon that, and then we could, wrap this session.
We realize the impact any of these aberrations or travesties in any of the issues of arts and the law has on mental health of the individual who is impacted. Under trying circumstances like COVID, it has become really a very big issue. So when we say counselors, everybody needs hand holding at a time like this. The emotional shock, the trauma, the need to work sensitively with rape survivors. So we've looked at the art, looked at art for healing purposes as part of rehabilitation, but it's not quite so easy. You have to break in very easily, and it's very you have to break in with great care and concern, and it's very easy to trigger off memories. Believe you me, triggers they stay with you for life. You may think you have got over it, but then somebody's testimony will evoke it in you, and the strongest person you see breaking. Somebody has to step in at that time. So sensitive handling. My first session with Beej, my first public session with Beej taught me how to be sensitive towards that. They had created a little subspace where anyone who felt triggered could go, and there was a sensitive trained counselor kind of person present there who could handle. This is the kind of world I would like to see the arts creating.
Absolutely.
Where we can think of not, give you one more whack so that you fall down and I can walk over you and get to the prize.
No, absolutely.
So if you are looking at transformation being the purpose of the arts or being one of the key roles the arts plays, then it has to begin with transformation of yourself, then transformation of your surroundings. The Swachh Bharat Abhiyan can actually be extended metaphorically,
Yeah.
to cover many areas. Don't just look at it literally and in a reductive manner.
No, absolutely. I think there is one.
So mental health that way.
There's one question, Arshiya ji, from Meghna. She says, do we need the provisions in law like Societies Registration Act in the time of Instagram?
If you are going to be taking any kind of public money, you have to follow fiscal governance rules. So then your Societies Registration Act comes into play. Okay. You remember I talked to you about how I set up, or I helped set up the YP Foundation many years ago, 20 plus years ago and all. It was a group of underage students, school students. Okay. And I sort of held on to them. And then they did such a great job, and they were still underage and still in school and still wearing school uniforms when they would, meet for that. People, money, not public at large, but like UN youth organizations, those dealing with youth things, adolescent issues, started engaging them and giving them small amounts of money, and they were signing contracts, and they could not sign contracts. They were underage. So, there were many complications like that. And I was ever terrified, this is public money. 1 paisa here or there will bring the system hitting, landing on our necks. And machetes, they would land on our necks. So if in the world of Instagram, you stay in the commons, but should you be looking at getting any kind of grants, I'm afraid you will have to follow the fiscal rules. And you can turn around and say, how silly. I admit the government has many how silly rules. If I do a session with you on just, it's called arts and the law, but the how silly rules, if I list them for you, you're going to be appalled. There are probably more how silly rules than how silly are the rules than the really good ones. But if it is the law, you just have to follow it. Again, saying, I don't believe in it, you're not going to get very far with that. Oh, I think this is a bad law. The government's going to scoff at you, put you in. And today the power of the government is very strong. Don't play in these. Don't play dangerously. You all are arts creators. Your potential is so much more. Don't risk yourselves for asserting on issues like this. Sure, do what you want to on Insta, but even then I must tell you that IT acts come into play for you. Very important. IT Act comes into play. And so, that message I told you, or that comes on your phone, you are using not the Sexual Harassment Act, you're using the IT Act in that case. So you see multiple acts come together, multiple agencies come together. If you are transgender who is a woman, sort of a transgender person, you will come under MSJE. You do not come under the Ministry of Culture. You may be the best dancer or singer or whatever. But the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment is the ones who make the rules and all about transgender. So it doesn't matter to the Ministry of Culture, for instance, that it has left no space, even scholarly space, or they keep giving fellowships and all that for research on the performance traditions of traditional transgender communities. In fact, the British call them criminal tribes. Hijras, eunuchs, even gypsies, they were criminal tribes. And then after independence, they were denotified. But the term under which they come is former criminal tribes. So look at the stigma involved in this sort of a thing. So today, earlier, after 1857's revolt, they introduced by 1870s or something like that, something called the Dramatic Performance Act. And it has not been repealed. And the fact that when you have to do a performance, you have to get a license from the licensing department, which is often the excise and licensing department, which means the other queue that you see next to you is the queue of people getting booze licenses, not Yeah, and the police license that you have to get, the general police license, and then the local Thana license. These are all residues of your dramatic performance act. You're supposed to submit your script. I don't see any policeman reading a script, but you are supposed to submit that script so that no treason, sedition, what was the other, blasphemy, and all these terms that are still existing today.
Wow.
Albeit in new hats and new avatars.
Wow. I mean, Arshiya ji, I just want to say that, like Swarnamalai rightly says, unmute is such an important intervention. I mean, that apart, I think just the clarity and the conviction with which you have, shared both the genesis of this idea and what it intends to do is just really fantastic. And I really, really hope that more, artists and people who work in the space of the arts and allied people who work in the space of the arts watch this conversation. I do hope we're able to organize that session for a close group of artists where we'll really be, we're going to be able to share with them some of the things that we probably may have missed sharing in this conversation. But I just want to congratulate you on your initiative and to
Thank you.
Just also say that if there is any way that we could be associated with it, we'd love to kind of, amplify it in whatever way that we can. So thank you for all that you're doing. It's truly, truly inspiring. And I'm glad that we finally had this conversation on such an important subject. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you, Akhila. So you've done a great job for bringing me here. If I may suggest that I owe a deep debt of gratitude to my two other partners, Paramita and Somabha, and you may just quite enjoy the conversation with the two of them. Everybody brings a different perspective and a different, so we may all be talking about unmute.help, but each one will be talking from their personal filters. So if you had a conversation with either of them or both of them, you will be startled at what they are prioritizing, because everybody thinks, for instance, you can talk a lot to me about the classical arts because that is where I'm coming from. Yeah. My own training has been in the classical arts. Paramita looks at contemporary arts, so she is looking at it differently. So Mama comes from activism, the space of activism. She has worked extensively with transgenders. So if you want a deeper understanding, she may be the right person. Absolutely. She has the knowledge of dance and she has the knowledge of law, and she can quote section and clause and all that, which I can't. I'm still trying to remember the mota sections, I asked my children once, I mean, the lawyer couple, I said, do you think I should enroll for a 3-year law course and all that? They said, no, you don't need to know how to get a bail. But who knows? I need to know how to get a bail.
Because when you just...
Maybe for myself only.
Yeah. I mean, arts and law seems like such a deadly combination to sort of, be able to like...
Two very powerful languages.
Absolutely.
Two very powerful languages.
Yeah, absolutely.
And can you imagine if they spoke together?
Yeah, fantastic. But thank you so much for highlighting such an important topic. I'm just like, to use a word that you used today, like buzzed and buzzing. So thank you so much, Arshiya ji. I mean, and thank you for all the humor as well. I mean, it's really fun when you have, you interview someone and the interviewee is just so delightful as you were. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a great weekend. And thanks to everybody who watched. And to everybody who watched this conversation, Ramaji, Sita Ratnakar, some of you said some good things about the conversation. Thank you. We really appreciate it. And this conversation, Arshiya ji, like I said, will be saved on Alap's IGTV. And we will discuss how we can also upload it on your website. Thank you.
And unmute.help. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you all for coming. Big hug to all my friends present there. So, friends are also for two types. Those who are friends and those who are just waiting to become friends. You're waiting to become friends with them. So, absolutely. My friends there.
Okay. Bye-bye. Good night.
Bye. See you.